to keep supporting this work. Yesterday, at our 12th First Ministers' meeting since this crisis began, I brought our government's commitment to the table. The federal government is ready to contribute $14 billion more for the things that all Canadians need.
Add $14 billion to the government's COVID-19 spending bill. That was the Prime Minister from earlier today outlining how the feds will financially support provinces and territories with their reopening plans. The funding announcement comes as Canada sees record-breaking unemployment levels. The country's unemployment rate hit 13.7% in May, the highest level in over 40 years, according to Statistic Canada's latest labour market report. But a silver lining. Overall job numbers actually increased. Nearly 290,000 jobs were added in May, despite high unemployment. But while close tabs are being kept on Canada's economy overall, the same can't be said for government spending tied to the pandemic. There's no official tally from the federal government, even with billions more in spending on the way. Is the government spending with reckless abandon? Could this hurt our economy in the future? Let's get some insight with Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux. Mr. Giroux, thank you for joining us. A few days ago, you said the government may have, and I quote, collectively lost a sense of perspective when it comes to spending, and that billions are barely noticeable anymore. Can you explain those comments to us?
Well, take yourself back to February or March, where we were expecting a budget by March 30th. At that time, anybody thinking about transferring an additional $14 billion to provinces would have thought, wow, this is like a bonanza for provinces and territories. But now the Prime Minister announced that today it's one amount among many other big numbers that are being talked about. So that's what I meant when I said that we have collectively seemed to lost our sense of perspective when it comes to government numbers and the fiscal situation of this country. When we're talking about a deficit that could hit $250 billion, that would have been unthinkable a couple of months ago. So had you told me that in January or February, I would have thought anybody who told me that was smoking something very strong. But now it's almost an accepted fact by many Canadians that the deficit will be that high, and so be it. And the government keeps on announcing additional spending measures. And I'm not questioning the validity of these measures, but that's what I meant when I said we seem to have lost the sense of perspective.
So, but it's true. And when we ask the government to give us, they tell us, well, a budget will be very difficult because we have to look 12 months ahead for a budget. That's pretty difficult right now. We understand that. But how about a fiscal update? How about tell us, what have you spent so far? How do you expect this money? How do you expect to pay it back? So you're obviously frustrated by the government's approach to spending. So how can this government be more transparent?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm frustrated with the way the government is spending. I'm frustrated with the absence of any plan or any tally so far. So we know that the government has been making numerous announcements to support Canadians and businesses in various sectors of the economy. And I think all parties agree that this is necessary. What's missing is the total cost of these measures. For sure, the government can come up with an approximate cost for all these measures. There are very bright minds that work in the public service, notably at the Department of Finance, who have a pretty good idea as to how much these measures will cost. If me and my staff can come up with an estimate for the cost of these programs, I'm sure finance officials can do the same thing and can provide that advice to the Minister of Finance. So there's, in my opinion, no reason why the government cannot or doesn't or pretend it cannot provide an estimate of the total cost so far and a plan forward. We're not asking for perfection. We're asking for at least a sense, an order of magnitude, and a sense of direction.
So what is your sense? Why is the government not coming up with that? Is it that it's the figure is so big that people, we know, I mean, we hear the billions of dollars being doled out every week. Why is the government not giving Canadians a fiscal update or just a sense of how much money is being spent and how this money, how it's being spent, and how it will be reimbursed?
I honestly have no idea. When I hear politicians saying it's difficult to project ourselves 12 months into the future, I fully agree. And we're not asking them to predict the future. There are a number of unknowns. What would be useful for Canadians to know and parliamentarians is, what is the plan? What's the government's plan when it comes to reopening the economy, as many people have said? What's the plan when it comes to going back to the new normal? What will the government do if and when we need to stimulate the economy? Or what will we do if there's a need for extension of the current measures or tweaking of these measures? We have no plan. So what's awaiting us after the pandemic, or the worst of the pandemic is behind us? There's no indication. So it's announcement on a daily basis without any sense of direction. So every day brings its own new announcements, but there's no overall picture that Canadians can get from their government. And that's what's worrying me.
Well, Mr. Giroux, all we can do is keep asking the Prime Minister when he will have an update to give us. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure. In the meantime, I'm more than happy to provide cost estimates and scenarios to Canadians.
Great. Thanks.